Thank you, Ali. Very good afternoon from this virtual island. I welcome you all to this exciting panel on the leadership expectations from the future workforce. I think we just witnessed a very exciting panel just right now. And before we move into the discussions, I'd just like to set the context. Rather than going to a lot of details, because I've been very humbled to have an esteemed panel of members who will be speaking on the subject. But as we see that as the world advances, there's no denying that as technology is advancing to more and more heights, more and more product services are being digitized every day. And what we see is that this has further jolted the overall digital transformation across sectors and has made indispensable for individuals and organizations to resort to and adapt to the new normal sooner rather than later. What does this mean? What is it actually changing? It means that the workforce is also changing, because something which consumers and businesses found out at the start of the pandemic, that they needed to adapt quickly. Some businesses had to shift to the remote way of working because they still needed to serve the customers. That means that people had to deploy remote working, have virtual meetings, etc., etc. And so these have actually made like they have been raising some questions that, okay, as the pandemic recedes further, how do we now make choices which will eventually trigger a call to action for future leaders and the eventual workforce, that, okay, how are we looking at the foreseeable future once the pandemic recedes, and what kind of workforce are we looking at? Because there's going to be some workforce that is going to come back completely 100%. Some people might want to continue remotely. So this is where I would now invite my panel members one by one and ask them, because they are experts in their respective disciplines and industries, and ask them for their expert comments. So if I may start with Alia. Alia, as I just said, that there is a lot which is changing because of the pandemic, and there is a lot of expectations from that. Okay, how are we looking at the new normal? What are some of the expectations as a leader from the future workforce given the new scenario?
Yeah, so because of this pandemic, Ali, the DNA of the for a workplace ecosystem has changed, and we need to adapt ourselves according to the requirement. And the it is the for the future there are many working scenarios where we have to adapt ourselves. So one is definitely the hybrid model the organizations are following right now, and this is going to stay for some time. Actually, there are companies which have announced already, like Facebook, that 50% of the 45,000 employees they are having, they'll be working from the home remotely for the next 3 years. Similarly, Google has said that 3 days a week they'll be working from office, and it is called a collaborative day. So now office is seen more as a collaboration space rather than a me space, and this mindset is coming as well. And but there are also organizations which are not opting for this, either the hybrid model or work from home. So Goldman Sachs CEO is one of that person who thinks that he's not able to bring the culture that he wants to bring in the organization if this hybrid model, or if work from home entirely is going to be continued. What I see personally is that as leaders we need to be very, very adaptable. We need to be empathetic, and we need to see that the sense of purpose is communicated to all the organizations, so people understand that what are we planning in the next future and how we are going to go about it. So communication is the key, and it is important that everyone is onboarded about the changes that we would like to bring, and everyone is in alignment, and they also own those changes themselves. You're on mute, Ali.
Yeah. Thank you, Alia, for these points. I think all pertinent points. But if I were to ask you, if you were to pin down maybe one or two specific, let's say, expectations, because you mentioned that yes, how organization both globally and locally are envisaging a new normal, then some organizations are not going to be going remotely, and how leaders need to be empathetic, they need to be having an like a flexible approach. So but if I were to pin down on two key actions on the workforce, that okay, how do they actually respond to this changing environment, what were those 2 points from you would be?
So one is definitely people needs to be reskilled. So I was going through a survey from McKinsey, and they have actually interviewed around 800 executives, and two-thirds of those executives have said that they are stepping up their investments in robotics, automation, artificial intelligence, and this is something similar which Saqib was also touching upon in the previous session. Also this survey was pointing out that by the year 2030, 16 out of 1 out of 16 global workforce workers will be out of their jobs because of this transformation that is happening, and these workers will be coming from customer service, production and manufacturing, etc. So for me, number one is definitely, people needs to look at their skill sets. And now there is loads of information available on the internet, and today it's not that difficult. So if I want to learn about robotics, or for that matter, if I want to learn about coding, it's not the same challenging task that it used to be some years back. So we have to be on all of us needs to be on a lookout to ensure that we keep upgrading our skills. And the second thing is that we need to have, and I've talked about this before, but I would like to re-emphasize this, that the communication channels should be open. So I will be having teams which will be hybrid, located in different parts of the world. We need to ensure that we work out mechanisms through which we are going to manage these teams, communicate, and be on the same platform as everyone. So that's important.
No, thank you very much, Alia. Reskilling of existing skills, and I think that is very much aligned, because the way that businesses and consumers' expectations are changing. So you need to adapt and have those skills to serve the needs of the market as well as consumers. And of course, as you rightly pointed out, communication channels need to be very open and flexible, so that because in this remote working, communication is key. Um, Thank you very much, Alia. Yusuf, do you agree that yes, these are the things, or you would like to further add?
Yeah, I'd like to first of all take a step back to pre-COVID-19. Pre-COVID-19, we were already noting that a lot of change is happening, and an organizational structure which is top-down, central command and control, is too rigid to respond to it. So we were talking about less micromanagement and more flexibility already, number one. Number two, of course, we have different these generations now. So millennials are used to more choice, and plus this whole thing about startups and hiring a lot of young people, they've got more choices now, and they want creativity at work. They want a sense of accomplishment, right? You can't be just ordering them and micromanaging them. So that was already happening. And then number three, like was mentioned earlier, robotic process automation, AI coming in. And in Pakistan, forget about overseas, there I know corporations which have laid off HR, they're taking a lot of that work from AI now. This is happening here. So this was already happening. Now, when this COVID-19 struck, people were forced to micromanage less because those people were not there. And you didn't even have, other than maybe there's sales systems, you can monitor the location of a, let's say, salesperson and how many trips. But other than that, it was very hard. So people were forced, supervisors were forced to trust their workforce. Trust came in. And now trusting more, and like I mentioned, what was, pre-COVID, this was already known by the top leaders or by top HR practitioners, that flexible work hours, work from home, brings out more creativity in people, which tackles change better. So, and then, and the millennials also say that, trust us more, don't micromanage look at our outcome. So I think the takeaway from everything is that COVID-19 in a certain way has reinforced some fundamental direction, good direction, which was already there by giving more trust and flexibility. And finally, what I see happening, let's say post COVID-19, is that I think we should listen to people more. Some, एक phrase है, work on vacation. Now, somebody wants to, if personally, at least for me, if somebody wants to go to Nathia Gali and work from there, I don't care as long as there's an internet connection. So other people might want the camaraderie of coming to work. So I think we have to be flexible. And then we can't do everything remotely. Particularly, I think in creative things, brainstorming session together physically can't be compared to doing it online. So certain things coming in, hybrid, there are different kinds of people, different kinds of models will work in different industries. Thank you.
So Yusuf, I think a very important point that you just mentioned, the pre-COVID times, especially for top-down organizations, and you talked about like non-flexibility, rigidity in the way of working. But as we have witnessed that there has been a kind of a fast track in terms of adopting and testing out new digitalized applications, processes, product services. In the same spirit, when it comes to working with teams and everything. So do you still think that the micromanagement aspect will still continue? Because now when you have these different applications to monitor the progress, because numbers can speak for themselves, whether you're working at a workplace or at home or maybe somewhere if you're vacationing, would that problem still persist, or you think that through these applications on the way that work is going to be done, you can cover up with that particular challenge?
I don't necessarily consider that a problem to begin with, because there are certain things where you do need to monitor progress. For example, if somebody has a sales quota, and I mean, as a manager, you're supposed to, check that. I'm sorry, but that has to happen. Yeah. Similarly, if you're on a project team, there's a project plan, and there are deadlines, then you got to meet the deadlines, because otherwise, how do you move as an organization, right? So certain amount of monitoring is fine, which would happen in any case. But I guess moving back a little bit and allowing people more space and more trust. And of course, the workforce has to respond by being trustworthy. It works both ways. There has to be that work ethic. You have to meet deadlines or have a good reason you're not, unless you're doing creative work, and then fine. So it depends upon the profession, the nature of work, and it depends upon the industry you're in as well. There's some industries which are very creative. They don't believe in timelines, so that's fine. But others, for example, public companies, they have quarterly reporting, and which in turn enforces some rigor on internal deadlines and processes as well.
Okay, thank you. So Fatima, if I may request you now, you represent MNC, and it's doing some fantastic work. How is the workforce responding to the post-pandemic, and what are your expectations for the workforce?
Thanks for getting me here to share my views. See, I'll be very honest with you that I think the chaoticness of COVID continues to exist. And something which we continue to see is the ambiguity part of it. And I think more than the workforce, I think it's a task of the leaders in terms of what do we do in these times of ambiguity. I think the jury is still out there in terms of what is the right way and what is the wrong way of working, whether work from home is the right piece, whether there is a need for collaboration. And I think both Alia and Yusuf have kind of talked about it. I think in my view, we have to really sit back and think that as leaders, how do we provide the right support to our teams to make sure that they continue to prosper in this time of ambiguity. I think that is more important, because teams will work the way we lead them, but I think how we support them in this time is really what's going to make a difference. And that, I think, has fundamentally changed. If you ask me, the need of the hour today is perhaps very different. We can't get into the power trap where we think that with power, with title and authority, we are going to influence them and get them to work right. It's really more about empowerment, as Yusuf mentioned. It's more about giving them space. It's more about giving them that ability of providing an empathy mindset, which is going to get them to work and get them excited about the workspace. And I think that's something that we have seen in COVID, that the kind of trust that has been built between the employer and the employee has been insane, because who is working, how they are working at home, but yet delivering results is, I think, been one of the key things that COVID has given us. So in my view, it's all about how the leader is going to manage it, how much compassion is there in the way they manage their teams, how much trust do they build, how they support their well-being, how much they allow them to use the flexibility. And then that's really going to, bring about the magic that we see when it comes to people working from home. And I think, going back to what Alia said, one very important bit is that we are all facing this fear of irrelevance. So how do we keep our own learning, our own development going at this point in time, and really be lifelong learners, be it leaders or be it teams, is going to be very essential to help us during these difficult times.
Thank you, Fatma. I think that was an important point that you just mentioned. Um, I would also encourage the audience that have tuned in large numbers to please share any questions for our esteemed panel members, and we will be happy to respond if time persists to address your questions. I think there's no denying. I think all three of you have come to like a common conclusion that yes, we need to embark on an adaptable and flexible approach, have that empathetic mindset, and provide that kind of flexibility, because that will eventually spur that creativity that we require. Because right now, as we see, the world is still evolving. We do not know what exactly will be the eventual picture, whether it's going to be hybrid, whether it's going to be completely 100%, or it's going to be something new. And at the same time, with new digital product services surfacing the market, new consumer trends, new demands coming from customers, I think that is still very much that we need to embark on a very flexible mindset. So I think these are some key takeaways which will eventually help the next panel that is lined up right after this one. So I think Fatma, Alia, you also mentioned some key takeaways on this survey that was administered right before the summit. And I think I'll just maybe take a moment just to share some of the feedback that has been registered through some of the responses. And I think very clearly it came out that in this post-pandemic future, some of the expectations that people have from the leaders is that you need to have that empathetic empathy that is very, very glaringly coming out from some of the feedback that has come in. Similarly, one thing that has come out as well as to clearly communicate. And I think that's what Ali also mentioned, that communication is key, that unless you do not expect, because as Yusuf was mentioning, that if there are no physical interactions and you're okay, how do you operate? But at the same time, communication is also key, because if that means that you understand what is being asked you to do, and then there are also requests that okay, there should be some kind of opportunities provided to the employees in terms of their upskilling, and also to evolve themselves according to changing work models. And also at the same time, they're asking for leaders to pass on a kind of a long-term strategy. And I think this is where I would like you to come and share your expertise, that okay, given that there is still a lot of changing the workforce, the work would look like. But how do we ensure that the long-term strategy is communicated in a manner that is at least clear to these employees, workforce of the future? Ali, if I may start with you again.
Yeah. So there's a question here, Ali, maybe we can take that as well. So the question is, was your workforce less productive during working from home, since we have a data for 1 year now? So this is very interesting, and I wanted to talk about it. See, it's not about less productive for sure. We were able to deliver to all the tasks that we wanted to deliver during COVID times, and especially keeping in consideration that I work for digital banking group, and all the load has come to us because no one wanted to go to a branch. and everyone wanted to do all their transactions digitally. So we had a very packed schedule and roadmap that we had to deliver during COVID times, and we were able to do it. But again, the key remained that, we were able to set a direction for ourselves, and that direction was communicated to everyone. However, it is also about, there are many, many studies which talk about people getting lonely since they're working from home. They need this human interaction, human touch. When you come to office, you have these coffee breaks, you've got your cigarette breaks where you go down, speak to each other, and then you've got, you have meals together. So that touch people were missing, definitely. And sometimes it is easier to get things done, because if, like, for example, I have to talk to a coworker, I can just walk to his or her desk and get that thing done immediately, and explain myself in a better way face to face, rather than, on a Zoom call or on a phone call. So that human touch is definitely missing. But yes, we were able to deliver tasks as they were planned. Maybe I think it could be much more joyful if, we were having these collaborative days, as I've explained earlier.
Thank you, Alia. Yusuf, the audience is really liking this new term that you just mentioned, work from vacations. So I think kudos to that. Yusuf,
by
I'd
the way,
like
sorry,
to.
it's not my term. I read it somewhere. I didn't
Okay.
invent it.
Okay. So one of the survey points came out was that leaders are responsible for shaping up the workplace culture, and at the same time, while we are brainstorming as to how the new normal would look like in terms of return to work, how do you ensure that we provide that culture? You mentioned a few points that in terms of embarking on a flexible approach, in terms of inspiring creativity by that empowerment. But how do you ensure that, specifically when you talk about those top-down organizations where there is less room for creativity? How do you ensure that we can start instilling that mindset?
Okay, before I answer that, I wanted to answer the question in chat. Short answer, yes. Productivity has gone up at HPL. I talked to HR before coming, because I just run the venture capital fund, so it's not really a mainstream HPL. But they said yes, productivity has gone up for a couple of reasons. One was just less time spent on commute, just more time saved going from physical meeting to physical meeting. But the second thing which I was more interested in was, which is really, I think, part of this conversation, is that less micromanagement, more trust allowed the blossoming of creative and problem-solving skills, which was the original thing. If we are moving to automation in any case, RPA, AI, because people are saying repetitive skills are not a need. It's happening in Pakistan as well. So you need more problem-solving creative skills. And when you take away that micromanagement environment and give them space, they blossom. I just wanted to answer and shortly. And your question was, sorry, it just slipped my mind. Aapka kya sawal tha? Briefly.
So how do you ensure that culture is set to provide that?
I remember it now.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Top-down is not homogeneous. Even in top-down, it's heterogeneous. There are some departments. For example, I generally baat karu, not particularly about HPL or any entity, but generally speaking, I've seen this across organizations, that technology ho gaya, marketing ho gaya, let's say, or innovation department ho gaya, they are this way. They practice the culture we are talking about. Work from home, flexibility, trust, less micromanagement, dealing with more millennials hired, right? There are others, more operational departments, more departments which have been operating that way since a long time, versus tech or marketing, which are basically newer departments. Or HR even is a new department to this level. They have more of an old world mentality, right? They need micromanagement, and they would love to micromanage and not give that space or that respect or trust. But everybody knows, I know the people at the top of the best companies around the world and in Pakistan know that this old style has to be changed. And we have to be more innovative, more respectful of millennials, let's say, engage with them, and as an organization, become more agile. Otherwise, I can see it. There's so many things happening all the time, new regulation, new fintechs coming up, new products by banks, competition. It's just happening too fast. So you have to have an agile culture, and you have to engage with millennials, and there has to be a combined culture, and which includes, by the way, openness. So ये जो पुराना है ना कि keep it close, you got to be as open as possible. That kind of goes hand in glove with trust and respect. So the leaders who have that openness and who can trust and who are more empathetic, अल्लाह इस्तेमाल किया गया है, basically एक ही चीज है. I think they would thrive in any environment, pre-COVID as well. They were the ones at the top of the best companies. And now, certainly, if another tier of leadership gets it, it'll be very good.
Okay. Thank you, Yusuf. Fatima, because we're almost running towards the end of the panel. Yusuf ने अभी बड़ी important बात अभी कही कि भाई we need to like ask these and we take these millennials into confidence. But you know, at the same time, there is a challenge that you know normally in organizations without naming any, normally we do give a lot of emphasis कि हाँ भाई the titles matter कि भाई अगर senior leader कुछ कह रहा है तो yes that is very important, and if a junior resource is saying something so you might not take that seriously. And this is one of the points that has also come through the survey, that people are requesting that leaders do take the inputs that are coming from these young boys and girls seriously, and you never know, that can be a game changer for the organization, for that team as well. Do you agree, and how can we ensure that we do trigger that kind of approach?
So absolutely agree to that. Actually, what Yusuf was also referring to is, when we talk about culture, it's nothing more but behavior at scale, which means that what are the behaviors being practiced at work becomes your culture. And trust me, while leadership can role model it, if the rest of the organization does not mirror the same, then it's not going to happen. And all organizations now have a huge percentage of young workforce. So for example, if I can speak about Unilever, 70% of our workforce is millennial workforce. So I think gone are the days of rank and file, and in fact that's exactly what I was saying earlier. I do so say in an organization like ours, every time we need to lead a change, every time we want to lead behavioral change, especially, we actually take the top 50 leaders into the loop. And we talk about what's the kind of cultural change that we want to bring about, whether it is agility, whether it is about bringing compassion to the core of the way we operate, whether it is about providing psychological safety so that people can, learn fast by failing fast, which is not typically something that, we would practice in our organizations, experiment. We have to start with a larger audience and get them to practice that same mantra. Otherwise, it's not going to spread through. And like I said, even anyone in the organization today is basically getting inspired by what they like, by what they see, what they appreciate. And it's really, if we make more of that happen around the organization, that's when the culture is really going to change. And all these good practices that we are talking about, that i.e. trust, i.e. compassion, i.e. care for each other, is really going to come to life. So can't agree more. It's not a skill which is just left, at the mercy of the few to practice. They have to use the muscle more, but it's something for everyone to show.
Okay. Thank you so much, Fatima. Thank you so much, Alia, Yusuf, for your very valuable suggestions, inputs. And I think we've gathered a lot of inputs which will help curate the next panel and the host to take forward the discussion with the next panel members. So thank you very much. I now hand over the mic to Ali Zanfer to conclude the session. Thank you very much.